In this video lesson, I'm going to be teaching you my 6 absolute best beginner solo piano tips that will drastically and instantly enhance your performance so that you sound more like an intermediate, advanced, or even a pro player. Now, over the years that I've taught thousands of students, I've run jazz piano school for over a decade, these 6 tips have led to the most improvement in the shortest amount of time. So if you're looking to really enhance your playing, get that better pro sound really fast and get away from the basics, implement these 6 tips and I promise you, you're gonna hear a drastic change in your playing immediately. My name is Brendan Lowe, creator and founder of Jazz Piano School. If you're looking to get more information on building a foundational setup for your jazz piano playing, go to jazzpianoschool.com/system. That's going to be a free masterclass that I created so that beginners, intermediate, and even advanced players can really start to hone in on creating and developing a rock solid foundation for their jazz piano skills and advancing even further in their journey. With that being said, let's get started.
All right, so here we go. I have Autumn Leaves pulled up. Number 1, okay? Tip number 1 is when you're playing melodies as a beginner or any time in your career, you want to try and place the melody on your pinky. Now, I know this is hard to do when the melody is moving. In this case, this is Autumn Leaves. But anytime you have a melody, try to place that melody in your pinky. This is going to allow you to harmonize underneath the melody. Okay, a lot of times in tunes, people will cross under, they might go and move up to their 3rd finger. In this case, it does fit your hand pretty well, but in other tunes, you might cross under or use a different finger, but for the most part, you always want to have your pinky on top when the melody sits or falls onto some sort of whole note. This is going to allow you to harmonize underneath the chord. So many times I see students cross under or jump up to their 3rd finger, and then they don't have any fingers to harmonize under the melody. And as you'll see in the upcoming steps, this is going to be very important. So tip number 1, whenever the melody stops moving, obviously when the melody is moving, you're going to use fingers like 1, 2, 3, you're going to cross under, but when you land on that point where the melody stops, it's the end of the phrase, right? And again, maybe in the later in the tune. For example, here, I'm going to try and place my pinky on this D instead of going 3, right? I don't want to place a 3 here because then I can't really harmonize under my 3rd finger, right? So always try and get your pinky on top. That's going to be tip number 1. Someone wrote me the other day, a student, they said this was just a really big epiphany that they had, and once they started using this, their playing completely changed. Number 2 is we're going to harmonize. We want to harmonize the chords on the downbeats or anytime you really see a chord. And again, so many times I see students play, they might just play a bass note and a melody note and maybe go to another bass note. You always want to get the harmonies in on the chords, on the downbeats, particularly on beat 1 when those chords are falling, or on beat 3 when the chords are happening as well. So I'm going to harmonize every time I see a chord, even on that F7 when there's no melody note there because it's tied over. I want to harmonize, and pick a harmony that I can harmonize and bring out the character of that chord. So always focus on harmonizing when you see chords. And again, when the melody does line up with the chord, don't just play a single melody note. We really want to fill that space up. I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. I'm just giving you some examples now, right? And again, on the E flat major 7, I'm going to harmonize there even though there's no melody note. So every time you see a chord, you really want to take the melody note and harmonize, okay? That's tip number 2. Just don't ever forget to do that because it'll sound really thin. So the next question you may have, tip number 3, is how do we harmonize? How do we harmonize? My best tip to you right now is stop playing root position chords in your left hand. Okay, this is a great way to start playing jazz, right? My root position chord, root position chord, root position chord. This is not going to give you a pro jazz sound that you want. So this is a great way to start, but the sooner you can move off of this into this new thing I'm about to teach you, the better your sound is going to be, the more progress you're going to make in a shorter amount of time. So the first way you want to start to harmonize is with shells. I did a podcast on this a couple weeks ago, but you're going to take the shells of the chord, place them underneath the melody. Okay, 3, 7. I have the 3 and 7 of the C minor 7. I have the melody up top. When there is no melody note on the chord, again, I'm harmonizing on the chord. I'm just going to play shells with the bass note by itself. Then I'm going to play melody, shells. See, shells, 3 and 7, melody. That's the first step to harmonization of the melody. Now, the second step, which is more intermediate and advanced, is you can spread your hands out and create a two-hand voicing by splitting the shells. So instead of doing this, right, or excuse me, this, I'm going to have my thumb take this third here, and I'm going to place a shell in my 7th. Now, what this does is actually frees up a lot of my fingers here to add some more harmonizations like extensions, right, or chord tones, just a thicker sound. Right? So now when my thumb is helping out with one of the shells, it actually frees up my right hand fingers to play more colors, add some more chord tones, do whatever it wants really, right? And just create a thick, lusher harmonization, which we now know is tip number 2, to help out the sound. But the only way I can get to this thick harmonization if my left hand helps out with one of the shells by playing root in 7, maybe root in 3, or root in 10 in some instances, maybe like in this F7, right? If you can reach that, or you can kind of pedal that as well, which a lot of students ask about, okay? So again, start by harmonizing with your shells underneath in your right hand. If you want to do a more intermediate or advanced spread, take your left hand, have it play one of the shells, and your right hand will play another shell, and then to harmonize, pick chord tones or extensions, depending upon how advanced you are, to fill in the rest of the notes between the melody and that other shell right here. So I could pick the 5, the 7, the root. I could throw in the 11 there. I could play the 13. Right? That's a beautiful chord right there. It's completely up to you. Okay? Number 4, leave the melody to have your right hand help out with comping. Now, autumn leaves is such a great example because we have a whole note here. Now, if I was playing a trumpet, I would need to continuously breathe air through my horn to play the duration of this melody note. The piano is a percussive instrument, right? We're not using air to make the note ring. It's mechanical. So the string is vibrating, right? So you don't have to hold your finger here down. You can actually just play the melody note. Once it's heard, use your right hand to jump down to the low end of the piano to actually comp for yourself. You hear how amazing that sounds? Like I'm playing the melody like a horn player, but I'm also serving the role as a pianist. So I'm jumping my hand down and comping for myself. I'm comping for my right hand. So many students will do this. They'll just hold their hand here and then they'll switch. You don't have to hold all the whole notes. Please don't. Please let go of your hand. And once that melody note is heard, that's all that the ear needs to hear the melody. Have your right hand lift, jump, and comp in the space to get some more rich low-end areas of the piano. This will instantly make your playing sound so much better, okay? That's going to be tip number 4. Tip number 5 is I see this all the time. You have to include low-end bass notes. So many beginner players will stay up here in this high end of the piano, again, playing root position chords, or even harmonizing like I taught them. Oh, excuse me, but they'll be all the way up here. This is too thin. To get a thick, rich, lush solo piano sound that's going to really enhance our playing, we need some low-end bass notes. Now, the way we can do this is a couple different ways. We can play the bass note and jump up to our shells in our left hand or some sort of spread, right? Like this or something. And then we can play the bass note again and jump up to like a chord. Sorry. Right? Or you can do what I just showed you is have your right hand jump down to the bottom end of the piano and your left hand can play some low end bass notes down there. Low end bass note. This is actually right? Kind of off the MIDI here. Let me slide this over just a little bit more here. Just so you guys can see this. Cool. Right, so there's that low end C there. And then I'm going to jump my hand down so you get a rich low end texture on the piano. You have to get these low end bass notes in your playing in order for you to sound like a pro jazz pianist, in order for your playing to sound better. Otherwise, it's way too thin. When you stay up here around this C, this is middle C here, this is an octave below middle C. If so many students will stay from this C and up, they'll never touch the lowest end of the piano. Really try to force yourself to get some low-end, rich, lush sounds. Like, listen to the sounds here. These are great low-end sounds. You have to get those low-end bass notes in for your playing to sound great. So again, hit the bass note, jump up to a chord, bass note, chord, bass note. This is okay for a bass note here. It's all right. It's not that low, but that's okay. Sometimes you can use those higher bass notes. Bass note, right? You can harmonize on the melody too. Or this. Right? So anytime you have those low end bass notes, your playing is going to sound better. And tip number 6 is to make your playing swing. Make your playing swing. And so many students struggle with this because the melody won't always do it for you. And this is the best example as well, because the melody is all quarter notes and half notes. There's no eighth notes right now. So how do we make this swing? Like, if we're playing this, how do we make it swing? Because if I were to go play this as a beginner, most students would do this, right? They're going to go 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 4, 1. Right? So again, slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's not swinging, right? So how do we make this swing when the melody's quarter notes? We can really only add swing when the melody's eighth notes. That helps things swing a little bit more when the melody is moving in eighth notes, because we can swing eighth notes. We can't really swing quarter notes or whole notes or half notes, right? Because they're right on the downbeats. Swing is created through the upbeats, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? We have to do this through our comping, and all the other steps and tips I've given you before has led to this point, okay? And if you don't do them, then this won't be possible, right? So all these tips work together to enhance your playing in such a great way. So now, because I have my pinky up here on the top of the melody, because I've learned to use some low-end bass notes, because I know I can move my hand here, what I'm going to do is comp in the space, and I'm going to comp upbeats to create a feeling of swing. Now, I can do this one of two ways, a couple more ways I won't get into, but here we go. 1 and 2 and 3. So because I'm hitting an upbeat, 1 and 2 and 3, or I could do 2 upbeats, I could go 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Because I'm playing those upbeats now in the space of the melody with my comping, I'm just playing shells right now, it's creating a feeling of swing because of my comping in the space for myself, right? This is such a huge solo piano tip that most people really never get the hang of as a jazz pianist. And to encapsulate the swing and make it come alive, this has to happen. Now, that's the first way I can do it. Because my pinky's on the melody, I can use all my fingers in the middle here to comp for myself. I can use full chords, right? Right? Because I'm using the middle of my hands and my fingers, I'm able to hit some upbeats to get the swing feeling. Number 2, you can jump your hand down like I've shown you before, which was actually tip number 4, right? Leave the melody note. You don't have to hold it, and use upbeats down here in the low end register to get some feeling of swing, right? So I went 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and I actually did 3 upbeats, right? And 2, and 3, and 4, and. Or is that what I did? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Right? So you can feel the swing when I'm comping now on the upbeats. As far as voicings here, I'm just using rootless voicings. Rootless voicing, rootless voicing, and I have a bass note in my left hand, utilizing that low end, rich, lush area of the piano to create the swing feel and get some low end texture in the piano to make my playing sound that much better. Right, so 1 and 2 and. I actually changed the melody bit a little bit too. I could go 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. Right? See how I'm comping on the upbeats of 3 and the upbeat of 4? You don't have to do that with fancy stuff like that either. Fancy voicings. If you don't know your rootless voicings, just play your shells. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. Change the chord there rather, right, to that E flat major. So you can use this in a simple way and comp on the upbeats, but that's going to deliver the feeling of swing. So your tune, when you're playing in a solo piano style, it doesn't sound like a boring, just like downbeat song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That sounds like a march. It's not jazz, right? Because you have no upbeats. You have no feeling of swing in there. When you're playing melodies, you're playing through tunes, and there's no upbeats, okay? So that's it, okay? If you apply these steps, you're drastically going to enhance and go from beginner to intermediate in instantly. You got to work on these steps, put them into your playing, and I guarantee you, your playing will catapult, right, into the stratosphere immediately, okay? You'll already be an intermediate to an advanced player, right? You just got to learn a couple more voicings. So number 1, pinky on top. When the melody is moving, obviously you can cross under, but when you land on that pivotal point where the phrase ends, try to get your pinky on top as much as possible to harmonize underneath. That leads us to number 2, is harmonize underneath. When you get to chords, make sure you harmonize the chords underneath the melody every time. Don't leave those with just the melody and a bass note or just a melody or who knows, right? So many students fail to do this. Number 3, for harmonization, don't just use root position chords. Try to get away from that. Try to use shells underneath the melody or split your shells between both hands. My thumb is helping out here in my left hand. My thumb is helping out here in my right hand. That's a beginner way to do it. And then if you're more intermediate to advanced, add other notes in your right hand. Pick chord tones and extensions to fill in to harmonize the melody when the chord is lined up with that, okay? So mainly on beats 1 when the chord changes, or beat 3 when you might have another chord there as well. Tip number 4, leave your right hand and move it down to the bottom to comp for yourself. You don't have to hold the melody up here. Right? Make sure you move your hand around the piano. It doesn't need to be locked into holding the melody when you see whole notes and half notes in a melody on a tune. Okay? You don't have to hold it. Tip number 5, include bottom end bass notes. You need to get this low end area of the piano in your solo piano performance. Otherwise, this is going to sound way too thin. It sounds like a beginner if you stay up here. You will sound like a beginner if you stay in this area of the piano. When you get your left hand moving down lower on the piano, right, to include some low-end bass notes, even if you do this, shells and melody with a low-end bass note, that will sound 20 times better than doing this. Right? This is way too thin. Do this. Low-end C, low-end F with shells. I'm just using shells here. This is still a beginner harmonization, but the only difference is I've shifted my left hand all the way down to the low end of the piano, okay? And number 6, comp in the space and utilize upbeats to create the feeling of swing in your tunes. So when you see whole notes, when you see half notes, when you see space, utilize the space, play and comp upbeats. That was an exaggeration of a lot of upbeats, right? You don't have to do that many. You could just do 1 and a downbeat, 1 and 2 and 3. So I used an upbeat and then a downbeat. You just need 1. You really only need 1 upbeat to encapsulate that feeling of swing. And if you get 2 in there, cool, that's great. Play around with what you like. It doesn't matter. But get the upbeats in your comping. right? You need some upbeats to make the swing feel happen. Otherwise, your playing is not going to have that swing feel, okay? Again, work on these 6 steps. When you start to integrate these into your playing as a beginner, even an intermediate player, you may not be doing some of these. I promise you, your playing will drastically and instantly sound so much better, and it'll lead to other amazing things that you can start to integrate into your playing and become an advanced and even pro player. Okay? Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you later. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to go to jazzpianoschool.com to check out all of our free, amazing education, all of the free podcast blogs. We do have a membership if you're looking to take a next step forward with us, get access to over 1,000 different jazz piano videos, playbooks, mini courses, a main course curriculum, success path, and so much more. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at support@jazzpianoschool.com. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, happy practicing.